So great to see you, Dora. Could you tell us a little bit about where you are at the moment? I know you've just been putting down your little one, Daniel.
Right now, I'm in Kampala. It's the capital city in Uganda. And I'm staying with my husband, Tom, and my little one, Daniel. So I look after him most of the day. And then I also have the project that I run some volunteer things. So I do that in between. But mainly I stay home.
The first time I met you, Dora, was not online, but was by seeing your image as the host on Meg Rowe's rendition of the Rublev icon of the Trinity. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What were you doing on Iona that you were captured by Meg to be the host to that Trinity rendition?
On Iona, I was a housekeeper. I first went to Iona as a volunteer for 1 year, and then I came back and I applied to be a resident housekeeper to stay for longer. So I applied and came back to Uganda and got the visa to go back. So on Iona, most times it's, I don't know if you've heard, but it's like a community for welcoming people. That's the instinct of it. Like helping to work together and also live in community, but also live knowing God. So my biggest role was to make sure people are welcomed.
And so what were you doing in Iona in terms of how did you get to Iona from having been a young student in Kampala?
So the first time I came to Iona, I was invited by my guardians, the guardians that met my mom just after I had finished university, no, just after I had finished high school. So my mom was a teacher at this school that my father had started for children with disabilities. And then one day she was just seated there. The head teacher had left her in her office in charge of that day. She had gone somewhere. So the couple came to visit. They had been nearby at a college training with VSO, training students. They were working with VSO volunteers overseas. They were from Scotland. So my mother met them. She took them around the school, told them what she does, told them about her children. And along the way, they discussed a lot and asked her what it is to be a single mother. Because my father died when I was 1 year old. So she told them about the challenges, most times the financial challenges, the school fees, and said it has been okay because she would get some loans, should get some help sometimes from the relatives, but university was going to be a challenge. So she requested them if they could help sponsor my university. But at that moment, they said they didn't have enough money because they just had only their pension. But later on, they took information about us, me, my brother and cousins, and wrote on their blog for their friends and relatives. And in a space of less than 3 weeks, they had already raised all the money for my university.
That's incredible.
Yes.
I mean, I think what I find amazing about that was that your mother shouldn't have been there anyway in the head teacher's office.
Yes.
You know, this was incredible sort of grace, you know, that she was there when they came to visit the head teacher, and there was your mother. And, you know, this then became this extraordinary provision that brought you through university.
Yeah, it was a miracle. We actually have a saying, it's like a bull giving birth. So she says it was her internet. It was a great miracle because I was not going to go to university. Like, even if she had sold all she had, like, we were not going to, and she was still paying up other loans, my brother, and paying for my cousins. So there was almost no chance of going to university, but in a space of 3 weeks, you are going to university. Yes, it was a great miracle.
And this, you know, it also expresses, if we had a more equal world, what would be happening across Africa and some parts in Asia, where women, particularly widows, are under huge stress and strain as to how to raise their children. And the work that I do in counter trafficking, we know that the group of widows and their children are particularly vulnerable to long-term loan indebtedness, and that puts them very vulnerable to losing their children when they're a little bit older into trafficking networks for exploitation. And I guess this account, this narrative, tells you a different narrative, that instead of a loan comes a free gift to say, have this. This is for your children to be able to get the education that you desire for them to be able to flourish. And this is a more equal world when we see people able to access this. It's a reflection on this actually has about as much gift for us as reflection on the Rublev itself in terms of hospitality. And what I liked about Meg's desire around the Rublev is to say the world is a much more diverse and varied world than just the Caucasian image that we have from the 14th century. Thank you for sharing that piece with us, Dora. It's very powerful. So your guardian, who you call your guardians, or your other mother and father, I mean, however you express it.
I call them actually dad and mom, and we have some other funny family names, nicknames.
Exactly, and everybody knows their space, but it's a relational affection and commitment, isn't it? And they then suggested, did they, that you come to Iona? Why Iona?
Well, when I went to university, even them, they said that first they were helping an African child and they wanted something to give back to Uganda because they had enjoyed the country. And so they first checked with our principal where they were working at the school they were teaching. They asked, is this family okay? Because they were also worried about bringing up a child. She's been raised by a single mother, and in the village, you bring her in the city, she'll probably be too excited and end up dropping out of school, maybe
going wild.
Yes. Going wild. So for us, we thought maybe they will pay only tuition and that will be it. My mother would try and look for the upkeep. But they then went ahead to buy for me everything for my room and give me gifts every month. And he was called Daniel. My late father was called Daniel. And within a short period of time, we had just built a connection and really became like family. When I had just finished university, I didn't have a job. And they suggested to go to Iona because they had been there for their honeymoon and they had loved the place. I applied to go and volunteer, and I was lucky to be successful with visas. It was a blessing.
Yes.
So I went back, volunteered, and after volunteering, thought maybe this is the end of it. I'm going back to Uganda and will get a job. But then I had enjoyed the place, and it really felt like this is what I'm called for. I've always been passionate about having people visiting at the house. Even my mother was always welcoming, whether we had enough food or didn't. She always said, oh, you can just drink a little bit of water and we shall all be okay. Just add a little bit of food, we'll share equally. And we have a saying that in Hafunde Mitima, hospitality, it's only the hearts. If your hearts are not welcoming, that's when the room will be small for you or the place you're in. But if the hearts are warm and welcoming, then even if it's a very small space, you'll all share it and be happy. So we just had a small house, but it was always packed with people.
So what is that saying again, Dora?
It's Nafunde Mitima. It means, yeah, that's what it means, that it's the hearts. The hearts are, I don't know how to explain it properly in English, but it really translates that if you are happy enough and your heart is warm and welcoming with someone, then however small the space is, you will fit in that place.
Okay,
but
so
if
it all
you're
starts
not
with the
at
heart.
yes. So if the space is small, if you think you have little food, but you're happy to share it, then it will be enough. If you're happy to share the small space, you all sleep comfortably. That is what it means. So when I went to Iona, it really felt like the ministry that I wanted, just having different people all the time visiting. And by the end of the week, they've come as strangers. And by the time they leave, they're all in tears. They already feel a strong bond, a connection. So I felt that is what I wanted to do.
Aha. Okay,
Yes.
so eventually you come back from Iona back to Kampala. So
Yes.
what you had a lot you brought from your mother's and your father's example.
Yes.
You brought a lot to Iona, but what did you bring back from Iona to Kampala? What was the new thing for you, or the thing that you matured into?
The charity, I brought back the charity, like bringing back the charity and constructing the toilets. But also I felt like I had grown spiritually and also in person, confidence, and it opened up my eyes to, because we were always doing services with symbolism. So it also helped me to realize some of the things I had never thought about, like when they would talk about labor for people who make clothes, cheap clothes, and all those things. I was not aware of them. So it really helped me to open my eyes to some of the things that I didn't know. And also it helped me to share with them what I knew. For example, a few people would come back and tell me, you've taught me about this. Most people came back to me and told me about seeing the good in people. That was like the slogan they always told me about, because they would say, Dora can never see anything wrong with that person. Even if everyone else is thinking, oh, that is not a good person, or this volunteer has not been doing this, they've not been doing the other. Then I told them how I manage my volunteers, because I was like the line manager for the housekeeping team. I told them I just see what they are good at, and that's what I encourage. So if someone is interested in doing laundry, so I'll come and say, well done, you've done the laundry nice, you folded it well. So before you know it, they'll be happy to go and do other things that normally they may not have done, but because they feel appreciated and you've seen what they are good at. So a few people came back differently, and then they would tell me, you're always seeing the good in people, you're always seeing the good in people. We did a service about it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, probably that's why you became the host at the Rublev Trinity. when you see when you see yourself there as the host of that threesome, when you saw it first from Meg, what does it make you think when you see that image?
I think it helped me to understand that, like I've said about hospitality, because we were all there. We were at the pub. There's a pub on Iona. We were seated. We had been doing several things with Meg, like dancing at the Kaylee. I'd met her a few times. But then she called us and took a picture and said, we're going to do a painting. I didn't know what kind of painting, but I was like, oh, that is an honor to be asked to paint me. So I was happy with that from the beginning. And then when the painting was brought out and they told us, I didn't know about it before then, but then I read a little bit about it, and also they told us it's about hospitality and sharing, and also having different people in the painting. So I really felt honored, and I felt like it is a good way to bring out how God's people can be different, but you can still be welcoming and you can still share what you have. So it's just, it just really signifies and summarizes what God's work is.
And going forward for yourself, what would you like the next 5 years to bring about?
So I would really like to start the bed and breakfast, and I shared it with my friend when I was on Iona. She asked me that, she told me actually, she said, oh, you're always running to help these other people, your cousins, everyone, you're paying fees, you're doing different things, you're running for the charity, you're doing volunteer work and you're not earning from it. But what is it that you would want to do, that you're passionate about, and still earn from it, because you would, in the long run, need money to sustain your family and yourself? Like, if to have like a guest house where I could have people come and visit, and not only people who can afford it, even people who probably can't afford it but feel welcomed. Like, probably someone has been staying alone and struggling, or wants to go somewhere to have at least a feel of the community, of a few people who will be around to take care of them and just feel part of something. So that's what I shared with her. I wanted to have a guest house where we can welcome people. Those who can afford can pay money, and those who can't can maybe work in a garden, or do different things around to help, like maybe clean up or something. So that, but still, by the time they leave, to feel like they've been part of something, to feel special, really. Yeah. So
it's Iona in Kampala.
Yes, like Iona in Kampala. So then my friend Judith recently got back to me. Unfortunately, she had lost her partner. And then she got back to me. She said, well, I've always wanted to have you achieve your dream. She actually helped me before to write a book. I wrote a book about my life. Money that was raised was for my project, the charity for toilets for children with disabilities. Excellent. So while I was on Iona, because I'd grown up in a school for children with disabilities, so I found out that they had better facilities for children with disabilities. So I talked to people about it, and they encouraged me and said, you could start up something, and you never know, people might give you a hand. My father was disabled. He had polio. And at 11, when he grew up, he started up a school for children with disabilities. And that's where we were raised. But he died when I was just 1 year old. However, when I was growing, I had friends who were disabled. So I would go back to the toilets, try to clean for them. Sometimes when people have left a mess, I didn't like it that they would have to crawl down in the mess. So I always thought, if I ever grow up, I'll do something about it. So as I was sharing it with a friend on Iona, initially I thought maybe I'll keep my own money, save up after I've worked, and then start building toilets for these children. But my friend told me, well, that's a great idea. You could share with some friends, you never know. Some people might be interested to help you. So we started and did different things. By the time I left, we had raised a lot of money. We constructed the toilets in 2 different schools for children with disabilities in Uganda. We started with a school that my father had started. Then we went to another school. And also a friend helped me to register it as a UK-based charity. So while I've been here, sometimes I go do research about it, because we have money for 3 more schools, and we never know, we might get more for more schools.
How many children in Uganda suffer from some form of disability in the way that it actually puts them into separate schools? Do you know what sort of numbers we're talking, Dora?
The school my mother was at was a mixed school, so there were about 130. So you would have people who are disabled physically, but you'd also have deaf children. So you'd have, and then maybe those who are a little bit mentally disabled. So you'd have different classes, and then you'd have those other separate classes for each of them. So they were mixed, but there are schools where specifically they have only physically disabled.
And do you know what sort of numbers we're talking about across Uganda? in terms of the numbers of children who are suffering from some form of disability?
No, I'm not sure of the exact number at the moment.
And do you have big
but they have,
NGOs that are working specifically with disability?
yes, we have lots of NGOs, but also the numbers we've been really blessed. They've reduced than before when there was still polio, because now with immunization, there are less. So it is improving, and also people are more accepting, because when I was asking like my grandparents, before it was hard to bring up my father, because most neighbors would see it as a curse sometimes to have someone who is disabled, but now the communities are more accepting, and with lots of medication and the charities that train people to tell them that this is a physical disability, it's brought by this and this, people have been more accepting.
You see, we used to have in the UK many schools that were partitioned for a disability, and now there is a move towards more integration. And that, I suppose what you're raising is the importance of where the community is at in terms of its ability and readiness to receive those who are disabled, to be being educated alongside their able-bodied children. So that's a real challenge as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is a big challenge, because like the school my mother went to after she was transferred, it was inclusive school. They were trying, like you've said in the UK, trying to accept people with disabilities to join in with the ones who are not disabled. But you find that when people don't have an understanding of it, you find they're giving them the same marks, they're training them at the same pace. So in a way, they are trying to accept them, but you have to accept that they are at a different learning capacity before then you can involve them. But if you're putting them in the same class, but still training them at the same pace, giving them the same marks with the rest, then I think that makes it a challenge, because the other students who just think they are dull, and sometimes they tease them. So,
so you're talking about harassment as well as
yes,
all this. You know, these are massive things that need to be addressed all the time around how we include our brothers and sisters, and that actually being differently abled or disabled physically can frequently has nothing to do with one's mental capacity at all. And yet, because you are carrying some sort of physical disability, people think that is a marker either of traditionally a curse, or it's a marker that you're not as bright or able or socially useful as physically able. And these are huge cultural exclusions that are operating. Is that still the case today in Uganda, where you are?
Yes, it's still the case. Maybe mentally it's worse, but also physically it is, because even a few weeks ago, I think we need to start from the ground, like from children. Like if we start to tell our children and their friends that it is okay and they need to be accepted, then I think we can work on it. Because like 3 weeks ago, I have a very close friend, neighbor, and then I had taken them to visit my cousins. But there is one of our cousins has a child who is disabled. They were born without one of the fingers. And then the other one was asking, why do you look like that? What? They were innocent. They were asking innocently, but they also seemed like they wanted to attract the attention of others to look at him differently.
Of course, the answer that they get from the adults has so much impact, right? So sometimes flowers come with 6 petals, sometimes with 5 petals. It makes no other difference to, you know, it's just variety. And it's interesting that we find so much difficulty to just say what we have is variety here. you know, and hardly ever isn't it wonderful, you know,
Yes.
especially if it's just the loss of or the absence of a finger.
Yeah.
You
But
know.
it was very interesting because when I tried to talk to the young girl, she actually went and apologized. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you were born like that, or something could happen and it happens like this. I didn't know, but Auntie has just told me that we are all different and God like created us differently, but we are all special in different ways." And it was just actually really good to see her do that.
Yes.
And I thought if we could start like this and the children know this, then they will grow up knowing that.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, this is the intergenerational responsibility we have, that it's all about the lessons and the way that we describe things to one another and to our children that is so important. So look,
And, I just want to talk just a little bit about mental disability in Uganda.
Okay,
Is also,
thank you.
That one is still really seriously taken as a curse because people think black magic and all sorts of witchcraft. So normally people are automatically left out because of that.
Because they are carrying a curse.
Yes, so there we still have a long way to go. We still have to do more, like a lot of mental awareness classes or meetings across the country.
Let me just, before we complete, let's just talk briefly about how COVID is impacting in Kampala at the moment and across Uganda. I mean, one of the things that has risen a lot here in the UK is, for instance, reporting around domestic abuse and domestic violence in the home, because people during lockdown, of course, became more violent. There weren't routes out for partners to, particularly women, to get out of danger's way, and partners, violent partners, were not out of their house and in a place where their anger, their frustration was being taken out in different forms than on their partner, which is totally irresponsible and a terrible, terrible impact, one that was not looked for from COVID. In terms of, and I'm thinking about the house that you are hoping to establish, I'm sure there will be those who are escaping violence in the domestic who will come and find you when this is realized. But what are the key things that come to your mind as you see COVID impacting Kampala and Uganda at this time?
Yes, even Uganda, there's been an increase in the cases of domestic violence, and it is attributed to polygamy that has been a cause for a long time, because men normally who would probably run away and go to different families and they're now stuck at home, and whichever family they've gone to, now you end up with violence in one of the families because of polygamy. And it has increased a lot. And also it is because of, I don't know if you know about bride price.
Yes,
because they feel the ownership of women. Yes, the ownership of women. So during COVID, it has worsened because they feel, if I paid a lot of money or cows to have someone, and now I'm broke, there's no money around to feed children, there's nothing, they feel they brutalize the women because of that. They feel they own them and they've wasted a lot of money on giving to their parents and so on. So it has actually increased a lot. And also the expectation from women for men to provide. And at the moment, most men who are not doing who are doing regular jobs don't have money. So even the rate of women who have been violent to the men has increased. We actually had a neighbor, but for them it wasn't because of money or anything. It was just a family living a sister living with a sister and a brother living with a brother when they are married. So the brother attacked the sister and really beat up the young girl just because they were commanding respect and the girl was not kneeling and doing what he expected her to do. If you are particularly from some parts of the country, especially people who have not been educated and sometimes just people who naturally have the superiority men complex, they will force the women to kneel, and sometimes even when they're kneeling, they will beat them up. So it is still demanded in lots of parts of the country.
And when would that kneeling take place? As you bring food, or when would you kneel?
As you bring food, as you greet, most times as you greet. Some tribes it is for both men and women, particularly if you're greeting grandparents or your parents, you will kneel. Some men will bend, not kneel. But particularly if you're bringing food or greeting or even talking, and most times also with domestic workers. Some homes actually have a lot of domestic violence for domestic workers. Young girls, that's what every time I see them actually, I feel blessed, but I also feel very sad because some of them, like we said, because of single parents, you find they could not afford school fees, so they end up dropping out of school. Absolutely. And they start child labor. Yes. So they're still young and then they start working in these homes and they experience a lot of domestic violence.
And they can end up then being trafficked for sexual exploitation as well when they get to puberty.
Yes, there has been a lot of sex exploitation. They give people this. There are different companies. The government has been very keen on it now, and they've tried to go through most of the documents and get feedback when the girls go outside. But before, it was really, really bad. They had lots of traffic workers going to Brussels, going to Dubai. So when they've been working in these homes and they're not getting enough money, so they advertise that they will be getting a lot of money. So they run to get money, but when they reach there, they find when they've been trafficked for sex work and for child labor, and they're not even given the money they expected. So we've had lots of suicide, we've had lots of death because of that.
Well, look, Dora, it's been fabulous talking to you, fabulous. I wonder if there's a prayer or a reading that means something particularly to you?
So I have two. I don't know, is that okay if I do two of them?
Of course, two is fine.
Yeah, so the prayer is a prayer we used to say when we were growing up. It's in form of a song. I actually did it on Ayana the first time.
Wonderful.
It really touches me because it shows that that last verse shows that in everything we do, we should grow more loving and kind. So every day
Wow.
Sounds. Father, we thank thee for the night and for the present morning light, for rest and food and loving care, and all that makes the world so fair. Help us to do the things we should, to be kind and good in all we do, in work or pray, to grow more loving every day.
Thank you.
Then the second one is an affirmation. I wrote it also when I was on Iona. It was really that encouraged me to know that you don't have to wait to do the bigger things in the world. You can just start with what you can, and then the rest will follow. It says, you don't have to change the whole world in a day, but you could still make a difference. We should not wait until we are able to feed all the hungry children people in Africa, South America, Asia, or even Glasgow. But we should start now by sharing the food we have with each other. We should not wait for immigration and border laws to change, but we can start now by opening our own homes to friends and even to strangers. We should not wait for the whole world to stop discrimination, hatred, violence, oppression, but we can start here and now through loving and accepting ourselves and our neighbors. We should not wait to serve God in heaven, but we can start here and now through serving those we meet in our daily lives.
Thank you, Dora. Quite right. Starting here and now. And thank you for bringing us from cleaning the toilets in your father's school and other schools to where you are now with an expanded vision and sharing with us today on One Boat. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.